Welcome to the Thought Brothers. This is March 21st, aka March Madness. The games are on now, so if you see me do like this, you know what I'm doing.
There you go.
Yeah, but I got my focus here on the Thought Brothers, and the brothers are in the house, and we're going to start off with the financial analyst, Carlos. What do you got, brother?
Hey, man, here's what's happening, guys. I just want to say, man, it's always a pleasure to be here on the Thought Brothers, man. You know, Gary, Mr. Spivey, CJ, and we even had another visitor who came in. I won't announce any names for child labor law reasons or whatever this would be.
Okay.
But you know, it's always a good time, man. And you know, a lot of the things we talk about really do make you think. I wanted to make sure that as we get towards the end of March, that you know we really represented Women's History Month very well. We started out my first segment with Women's History Month on some pioneers in three different areas. We had Shirley Chisholm from the world of politics. We did Jane Kennedy from the world of broadcasting to modeling to acting to philanthropy to everything else she's done. And then we also had Danica Patrick. How about that? Female race car driver, Indy and NASCAR. Then we last week we got into the Olympics a little bit, man. You know, it's 2024. We're supposed to be having the Summer Olympics. So we had three of the greatest summer Olympic athletes ever, and they were women. Mary Lou Retton, we talked about, Florence Griffith Joyner, and Jackie Joyner Kersee. Now, how are we going to do Women's History Month if we don't talk about the titans of business, the women who make things happen in the world of business? I mean, if it wasn't for these women, business in the 21st century wouldn't be business. So I got three ladies to go at, and I'm gonna try to break them down, and then I'm gonna try to finish with enough time so you guys can give feedback. But I'm gonna start with this one that you might not even expect that I would start with. Come on, man, I'm gonna start with a lady who's worth her net worth is $650 million. 650. I said, what is she doing? I'm thinking to myself offhand when I saw this article, you know, and before I glanced at the name, I said, what is she doing? Designing dresses for the Kardashians? Well, to a certain extent, she is. Vera Wang is an American fashion designer.
Oh, yeah.
Wang initially pursued a career in figure skating before transitioning to fashion. She worked for Vogue and Ralph Lauren before launching her own bridal gown boutique in 1990. What I really like about this story about Vera Wang is that, if anyone who doesn't know, I mean, she's an Asian American, and she is born in New York City, and she wasn't 25 when she started her clothing line. Okay, it says she was 40 when she broke away and started her own clothing line, and it's so impressive that, you know, in an age of instant gratification, where everybody wants to get rich overnight, everybody wants to be a millionaire before they're 22. She really worked her way up the ladder. She went to college. She stayed at Vogue. She worked for Vogue for 17 years before joining Ralph Lauren in 1987. Wow. I was like, wow. She only worked for Ralph Lauren for 2 years, but at the age of 40, she said, man, I got to go ahead and start my own company. And she redesigned and became an independent bridal wear designer. How about this? Vera Wang has made wedding gowns for public figures. I thought this was incredible, such as, well, some you may know, some you may not. Hayley Williams, Ariana Grande, Vanessa Hudgens, Chelsea Clinton, Karina Gore, Ivanka Trump, Campbell Brown, Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey, Victoria Beckham, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Avril Lavigne, Hilary Duff, Khloe Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, and Kim Kardashian. Also, Wang's evening wear has also been worn by Michelle Obama. And it says even figure skaters who have worn costumes designed by Wang at the Winter Olympic Games. How about this? She's designing bridal gowns and Olympic wear. So again, at the Winter Olympic Games include Nancy Kerrigan, Michelle Kwan, Evan Lysick, Nathan Chen. Wang was an Wang was inducted into the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame in 2009 for a contribution to the sport as a costume designer. She designed the uniforms worn by the Philadelphia Eagles cheerleaders. Okay, 650 million bucks. She doesn't just make wedding gowns or bridal gowns. I mean, she's doing Olympic outfits. She's doing outfits for the NFL cheerleaders. I mean, she is just breaking it down. So definitely want to send a salute out to her. Okay, and before we circle back, I have another lady. This one might shock you again, because I think a lot of times we think about business ladies, everybody thinks about, just certain people. And I think it's very important that we, give a shout out to everybody who sort of led the way. How about this one? We probably all know about this one, but just really haven't thought about it. This person is worth 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion. I thought 650 million was balling. 1.3 billion. I'm talking about Sara Blakely, okay? Is an American businesswoman and philanthropist. She is the founder of Spanx, an American intimate apparel company with pants and leggings founded in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2012, Blakely was named in Time Magazine's Time 100 annual list of the 100 most influential people in the world. Wow. And it says in 2014, she was listed as the 93rd most powerful woman in the world. I thought it was like top 10, top 25, but I guess if you're in top 100 on a planet with what's it? I don't know, 3 billion people or something. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So the crazy part about her success is she started out selling office copiers. She was just a regular salesperson. And based on the fact that she was from working in Florida, she actually started out at Disney World working in Florida. So very hot. Then she got a job selling door-to-door salesperson, selling copy machines. That was a hot thing in the 90s, okay? So, the office salesman and stuff like that. But forced to wear pantyhose in the hot Floridian climate for her sales role, Blakely disliked the appearance of the seamed foot while wearing open-toed shoes, but liked the way the control top model eliminated panty lines and made her body appear firmer. So for her attendance at a private party, she experimented by cutting off the feet of her pantyhose while wearing them under a pair of new slacks, and found that the pantyhose continuously rolled up her leg, but she also achieved the desired result. At age 27, Blakely relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, and while still working for another company, spent the next 2 years and her $5,000 of savings to research and develop her hosiery idea. Well, the rest is history, folks. She's worth $1.3 billion. She did sell her company 1.2, but she in October 2021, the Blackstone Group acquired a majority stake of Spanx Incorporated. The company was valued at $1.2 billion. Blakely was to retain the position as executive chairwoman. Forbes magazine estimated her net worth after the deal at $1.3 billion. To celebrate the transaction, Blakely gave each of her 750 employees $10,000 in cash and let them purchase 2 first-class plane tickets to any destination they desired to travel to. You talk about balling. We only hear about Trump, and we only hear about Howard Hughes, and we only hear about certain people over the course of history. This is a titan right here, man. I don't know of anybody who had 750 employees and gave them $100, all of them $100 bonus. She gave them all $10,000 and said, get 2 tickets anywhere in the world. We got to take our hat off to her. But before I end, because I know I'm getting short on time, is it any doubt who I'm going to next? Is it any doubt? Come on, baby. You know who I'm going to next. Come on, man. You know we can't do that without Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey. Come on, Gail. Oprah Gail Winfrey. Born in 1954, also known as Oprah, is an American talk show host, television producer, actress, author, and media proprietor. She's best known for a talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, broadcast from Chicago, which ran for 25 seasons from 1986 to 2011. And she was dubbed the queen of all media. She was the richest African American of the 20th century. Oh, wow. And was once the world's only Black billionaire. Wow. Like, hold on, man. She was once the world's only Black billionaire? Come on, man. We talking about titans times 10. By 2007, she was often ranked as the most influential woman in the world. Little net worth on her. We talked about Vera Wang with 650 million net worth, Sarah Blakely 1.3 billion, and Oprah Winfrey 2.8 billion. Come on, Oprah, come on. She doing it, man. So just to send a shout out to all the ladies who watch the show. Again, we wanted to make sure we represented for Women's History Month. And like I said, we've done everything from athletes to political activists to models to journalists. But I think the three I got today before I start my my next assignment in the Great Northwest are pretty important. So what are you guys' thoughts on Vera Wang, Sarah Blakely, and Oprah Winfrey? What you got?
I didn't see any of those coming. I didn't see
know
any
you
of
did.
those.
I didn't either.
I didn't see them. And
I
I
know
will
you did.
tell you, full disclosure, because I'm comfortable in my manhood, I haven't actually worn Spanx, but if you see me in my bike outfit, it's as close to Spanx as you're gonna get.
You got it.
And
You
so
got
if I'm looking firmer, it's a Spanx kind of theory. So,
Yes,
but
sir.
no, that's good. I didn't see the Vera Wang. I didn't see any of that coming.
Yep. How about that? Mr. Spivey, any thoughts on those three ladies?
Well, Carlos, I got to admit, I'm like Gary. I didn't see that coming either. I'm familiar with Vera Wang. She has a line of, she did start off in bridal, but she has a line, her line is extended now. I think she even has some luggage with her name on it. She's does a lot of marketing type stuff. And Oprah, I'm familiar with. Blakely, I did not know a lot about her, but I do know about Spanx. I've heard about it. And back in the day when I was doing a lot of skiing, I used to wear something like that under the ski pants, especially if you wore the knit type ski pants. So hey, shout out to all three of those women. Like I said, I really don't know a lot about Blakely, but I will say, hopefully, if Donald Trump is looking at this show, he might have had some suggestions as to where he might be able to go to try to borrow some money.
Woo!
Nobody loaned that broke dude any money. He don't pay his bills.
Uh-oh. Hey, look, CJ. Hey, look, man, I got a daughter. CJ got a daughter. What do you think about these ladies, CJ? Just a quick thought before you guys take over and do your thing on the rest of the show.
Like I said, I'm not much of a fashion guy, but like I said, I'm vaguely familiar with the first two, but I don't keep up on fashion in any stretch of the imagination. But I don't know anyone who doesn't know Oprah. Like Oprah is like the definition of a mogul. Like Oprah is like in everybody's TV set. She's interviewed everyone. She, like I said, probably like I said, the most powerful Black woman you can think of at the top of your head in terms of like media. That's not like a first lady or something.
I agree. All right, brothers. Well, look, that closes out my not Black History Month was February, but for Women's History Month in March, I just want to let the ladies know we tried to represent. So hopefully you guys enjoyed those reports. And let me turn it over to you guys to talk about some other issues of the day. Who's going next, Mr. Spivey or CJ? What we got?
CJ is on the on-deck circle. So go ahead.
All right, sure. I'm going to start with some sports today, switch it up and take it away from some of the heavy politics and start with just some hometown sports. We got the Commanders. They're looking at the #2 overall pick in the draft coming up fast. Caleb Williams looks to be locked in at #1 with Chicago since they traded Justin Fields for a bag of Doritos and a Diet Coke. But which I don't know. I thought he was to have more trade value than that, but the Commanders ended up getting more trade value for Sam Howell than the Bears did for Justin Fields, which is crazy to me, but somehow they pulled it off, which is, I don't know if that's Washington's front office being good or the Bears front office just being that bad. We'll see, but there's still talks that Caleb Williams, I know RG3 had a viral video talking that Caleb Williams should pull a Eli Manning and try to force his way out of Chicago. But I'm not sure if they're going to do that. I think them trading Fields is like they're locked in. They're going to take probably Caleb Williams, barring something catastrophic, which leaves Washington at #2. They definitely need a quarterback. We talked about their free agency last week. They did a lot of good things, filled with a lot of young free agents, filled a lot of positions of need, and they had a whole lot of them. Nearly every position was a position of need, so they had a lot of work to do, a lot of holes to fill. They did that. But now the real big hole that they have to fill is at quarterback, and that's the important one that they have to hit. So a lot of the mock drafts are going between Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or maybe having them trade back for someone like JJ McCarthy. My opinion on it, I would like to see them go for Jaden Daniels if they're locked in at that spot, or trade back. Or if you're going to trade back and maybe go for like maybe a McCarthy or a Penix or something like that later and pick up more assets, maybe pick up a Marvin Harrison or something like that. I would be okay with that. It would make me physically ill if they drafted Drake May at number 2. I just don't see the star power in him. I don't see it. I look at the film and just see like maybe a Mark Sanchez type, or like somebody who's got talent, but maybe without the goofy highlights, but like a talented quarterback, but I don't see superstar. There's just too many flaws. If he maybe goes in the right situation, of course he has the ability, but I don't think you can pass up on an electric talent like Jaden Daniels. That'll give the Commanders the most exciting quarterback they've had since RG3, to give them just a dimension to excite the fan base. It's not just about the X's and O's at this point. The Commanders need a whole refresh of reinvigorate the franchise and the enthusiasm of the fan base. So they have to factor that in as well. So I think you go for Jaden Daniels, experienced college quarterback. Yeah, dual threat, was excellent and efficient in every category. Heisman winning, checks all the boxes. So that's where I would go. Or I wouldn't be opposed to a trade back. Again, for a team that was as bad as the Commanders, you need to fill as many holes and you want to build through the draft as much as you can. So trading back, getting more draft picks. If you are good at drafting, we'll get your team built up right. So that's anybody got any thoughts on that?
I'm surprised, CJ. I noted. I'm surprised Washington didn't try to get Russell Wilson, or if he was even available to possibly come to Washington. And as far as Justin Fields, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I've said over and over again, I've always felt that Justin Fields received too much accolades. I did not think he was a good quarterback. If you go back and you look at his film, if he drops back to pass, 75% of the time he's going to run the ball. The guy is not an all-around player. So I'm not surprised that they finally saw that, he wasn't everything that people have been hyping him up to be. And as far as Caleb Williams, from everything I've heard in the past, I believe that the Bears are going to be all over him, because they always talk about the mistake that they made when they passed on Mahomes. And they wish they had never made that mistake. So I don't think they'll make that mistake again with Caleb Williams.
Hey guys, I'm just going to tell you, please be aware. I'm with CJ on the fact that the Commanders with was it Jaden Daniels? I think he's an electric talent. I think the key with that is they weren't interested in Russell Wilson because they're finally trying to build a team the right way. Instead of trying to get too many old veterans and sign them to big contracts, the veterans they brought in this year all like on 1-year deals. So if they don't make it, they can get rid of them, don't have any salary cap hits leading into the future, and they want to start with a young quarterback. I mean, they took the mystery out of it. They didn't leave Sam Howell there, who started pretty much almost all the games this past season. They said, no, he's not our guy. Let's get him out of here. Ain't going to be no quarterback controversy. They nipped it right in the bud. We bring in a veteran, Marcus Mariota, who's not starting. He's happy to be a backup. We're going to draft a young guy, let him start, let him play, let him do his thing. And that's what you do. Teams that want to be championship contenders, let the kid get in there this first year, take the lumps, learn how to play quarterback. Peyton Manning was terrible his first year, but he had the potential. Look what happened to him. They didn't wait 3 years down the road to let him play. By the third year, Peyton Manning was already all-pro first team. So I think the key is draft a young guy, get him in there. The only thing I'm worried about is there is a Heisman jinx. It's only 2 quarterbacks that have ever won the Heisman that have won Super Bowls. Each one of them won 2 Super Bowls. But the problem is, one was Roger Staubach with the Cowboys in the 1970s, and the other was Jim Plunkett with the Raiders in the 1980s. For some reason, Heisman-winning quarterbacks just don't win Super Bowls in the NFL. So I am not sure. I'm hoping that jinx gets broken, because I think Jaden Daniels is what the Commanders needs. They need excitement. They need some action on the field, and he's probably going to bring it. And it looks like that's going to be their man. If you draft Drake May from North Carolina? He's basically the guy who was a sophomore when Howell was a senior or something, or maybe a freshman when Howell was a senior at North Carolina. You get another Sam Howell, in my opinion. So I think you probably just want to roll with Daniels from LSU. That's my take.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to go with that. And then I'm going to switch to hoops and stir the pot a little bit more. There's been a viral TikTok kind of hashtag battle going on between the older generation of the Jordan fans in the 90s and then the modern NBA fans. And it's called that we're done with the 90s because the younger NBA fans are tired of the older NBA fans telling them how great the 80s and 90s were and the era, how physical and how tough MJ had it. And then when we go look at the highlights, sometimes I'm a big MJ fan, so I'm not going to go crazy with it, but sometimes it does appear like he's competing against plumbers and other competition at times. I'm just saying, but because I do believe the talent pool of the NBA now is better than it was. The greats are still great. I'm not taking anything away from the greats, but I think overall, if you're looking at the talent pool and what the players can do, how big, how fast they are, how athletic they are, things like that, the level of skill of someone like Kyrie Irving. We're seeing things like Victor Wembanyama now and Chet Holmgren and 7-footers who are doing step back 3-pointers, Giannis Antetokounmpos. We're seeing some different stuff, and the level of competition is insane. The amount of all-stars and guys can score 50 points and things like that. So, but there is, again, a different level of physicality. I understand that. There's definitely more physical back in the day. The rules were different in terms of hand checking and a level of physicality, but the skill level of the players, I think, is objectively higher in the modern era. The toughness level may have been higher back in the classic era, but I think the skill level of overall skill and talent level, just overall, as time and science progresses in terms of how freakishly athletic these players are and the things that they can do. And then we have Steph Curry's, we have things that have developed over time. The Shaquille O'Neals have evolved into the Victor Wembanyama's and things like that. So that is my argument. Not that to take anything away from the classic era. I'm a huge 90s basketball fan, so I love the Bulls and their era, but those Jazz teams were not always loaded, I would say, with Jeff Hornacek and Greg Ostertag and those guys. That wasn't Jokic or Embiid or anything like that. So I'm just saying, I love John Stockton's an all-time great, but I mean, I don't know what John Stockton's going to do with Chris Paul or something in the modern era. Prime Chris Paul versus John Stockton, or what would he do with a modern NBA point guard who is now probably like 6'5" or something like that, which is, it's a little bit different, the level of athleticism and just things that the players can do with the spacing and stuff like that. So I'm sure there'll be some opinions on this.
Come on, Mr. Spivey. Go ahead. Go with it. Gary,
we're gonna have to pause and check Mr. Spivey's blood pressure because I'm looking.
If somebody's gonna start some crap, it's got to be CJ. You know what? I mean, certain things I agree with. Back in the day, and Carlos, you may be able to relate to this. Magic Johnson was the one that changed the game. A lot of people don't realize that Magic Johnson changed the game. Until Magic Johnson came out of Michigan and came into the NBA, you would never conceive of a 6'7" guard putting the ball up court. That was just unheard of. I mean, back in the day, you had Bob Cousy. You had those guys. I think probably the biggest guy back in the day that was bringing the ball up was the big O, Oscar Robertson, and he was 6'5". So, I mean, I'll give you that one, CJ. And as far as people like the Joker and Oscar, the boy, the Greek boy, people like them, Shaq can't compare to him. I mean, I know Shaq today still thinks he was the best big man in basketball. But when you got Djokovic hitting 30-foot three-pointers, Shaq couldn't even shoot a foul shot. If you remember, they used to have a thing near the end of the game. They call it hacking Shaq because he couldn't shoot foul shot. So I'll give you that. But the difference that I find today, and I follow basketball. Golden State is my team, win or lose. But the thing that I find today that is so much different is the game is so physical. Back in the day, basketball was a game where You may even remember it was a non-contact sport back in the day. Today, no. You got Jerry West, even Magic, and Michael Jordan, and Stockton, Earl of Pearl, all of those guys, Bobby Dandridge. I don't think they could play today because one, the game is just it's gone out of control. I mean, I watch the games today, and I look at people like LeBron James and the Greek boy from the Celtics, and some of the other ones. I mean, back in the day, they probably would have gotten thrown out of the game with the way that they charge and that type of thing. So that part of the game to me has really gotten out of hand. But I give it to you with the big guys. The big guys today are much more athletic and they're much more skilled than the guys of yesterday.
Hey, real quick, I just want to throw out there, I still put the 1987 NBA All-Star team against anybody. Eastern Conference, Moses Malone, Julius Erving, Maurice Cheeks, Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, Dominique Wilkins, Michael Jordan, Eastern Conference. Western Conference, Tom Chambers. He was a bad, blue-eyed soul brother. Lakers, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Sleepy Floyd coming out of Georgetown doing some work out there on the West Coast. What's this say? Joe Barry Carroll, Rolando Blackman, Mark Aguirre, Alvin Robertson, Walter Davis. Alvin Robertson, Walter Davis, not regular people you would know. But Denver's Alex English. How about this? Houston Rockets, Akeem Olajuwon. And also, Houston's Ralph Sampson was still playing. Wow. And then the coaches we put against anybody. Come on, man. You got Pat Riley with the slick back, and you got KC Jones from Boston. So I don't know, man. Like I said, I think the game is more physical now, but I don't know. I still think I'm always partial to the players, and I'm in between on the age groups, right? But I still think back in the day it was better, man. I don't know. Today you got all these talented players, big men from all around the world, but I don't know, man. Them guys I just named were pretty darn good. That's just my take.
And Carlos, I was listening to you. 3 guys that you named back in that day could play today. One of them was Dr. J. The other one was James Worthy and Larry Bird. I've often heard guys say, I remember Michael Jordan said in an interview, he said he would try to punk Larry Bird. He would talk stuff to him during the game. He said it just rolled off his back.
Yep.
So I think
most people say Larry, most NBA players I've watched in interviews, they say Larry Bird was the biggest trash talker ever.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ever.
He was tough. He was a tough guy.
Famous stories.
But he could back it up.
What'd you say, CJ?
Bird has respect.
Stories about Larry Bird's trash talk game. It's
Yeah.
legendary.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right. Well, that brings us to the agitator, the Mr. Spivey. He took his blood pressure cuff off now. And so
You know what? I'm gonna do like CJ. I do want to talk about something that probably a lot of people are not aware of. There's a new restaurant. It's not really that new that opened up here in Alexandria, and I took my wife over on Sunday. It's called Dello J's, a very nice restaurant, and it's a minority owned, but it's a very large mixture of people there, which I was very surprised. But in the booths that they have a picture in each of the booths, and it's a historic picture of somebody in history, like Andrew Young and Abernathy, Dr. Martin Luther King. The booth we sat in, it kind of caught my attention because the booth we sat in, there was a picture of Rosa Parks, and it had a biography of her. And when I looked at it, as some people know, before I became an FBI agent, I was a history teacher. And when I saw the picture of Rosa Parks, it brought back a memory that a lot of people probably do not know or aware of. But there was a lady by the name of Claudine Colvin. She's now 84 years old, but she was the first person that refused to give up her seat to a white woman in 1955. And she and a group of her girlfriends boarded a bus directly across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his sermons. They boarded the bus. She was on her way home, and the bus started to fill up with white people. And back in 1955, if you were riding a bus, you could not sit directly across if you were a Black person from a white person. And there were signs in the bus that said colors in the back and whites in the front. And so when the bus started to fill up, her friends got up and gave their seats up, but she refused to give up her seat. And when the driver asked her to give up her seat, she said she wasn't going to give up her seat because she had paid her fare just like everybody else, and it was her constitutional right to have that seat and sit in that seat. He later pulled the bus over and called the police officer. A policeman came in and asked her to give up her seat, and she refused to do so. And she told him the same thing, it was her constitutional right. So he called for other officers, and eventually what they did, she had her books in her lap. They knocked the books out of her lap, handcuffed her, and did not take her to a juvenile facility. She was only 15 years old. They took her to jail and put her in with other criminals or whatever. And she was in jail for a few hours. And consequently, after that, the NAACP there in Montgomery, they were made aware of this, but they decided that they did not want to make a big issue out of it because of two things. And you're going to find this crazy. It was two things that she said that they did not want to make a big issue out of it. One, she was 15 years old and she was a teenager, and they didn't think that people would take a teenager seriously. Second thing was that they did not feel that they wanted to make a big deal out of it because she was a dark-skinned person. And they felt that a light-skinned person would get more acceptance to that particular incident. So what the NAACP consequently did was, and they did this over the years, even recently, what they finally did was they sent Rosa Parks, who was an officer of the NAACP, to get on a bus and refused to give up her seat. And that was where the advent of fighting for the civil rights and Dr. Martin Luther King got involved. And that was how this thing was built. Consequently, Claudette Colvin and I think it was 4 other people, they and a lawyer by the name of Gray, they filed a suit against the city of Montgomery, and it ended up going to the high court. Now, she went to court, she pleaded not guilty, but they convicted her, and being that she was a 15-year-old, they did not put her in jail. What they did was they put her on probation, but she refused to accept that. And she and 4 other girls filed a suit against the city, and it ended up going to the high court. And Montgomery, a law, bus law, against Blacks having to give up their seat was found to be unconstitutional. And they ended up winning the case. But consequently, what happened was she ended up having to leave Montgomery. Her sister couldn't get a job, and she was unable to get a job. And she had to drop out of college because she said every night they were in fear that the Ku Klux Klan was going to come and torture them, kill her mother and father. So she ended up leaving, going to New York, where she became a nurse's aide, and she retired, and she's now back in Montgomery, Alabama, and she's 84 years old. So I don't know if anybody knew that story or heard anything in the world about Claudine Colvin, but this happened in 1955. She had a son in 1956, and then she had another child.
That's a little known Black history fact to me.
I like it. And, you know, for Women's History Month, you know, that's Black history for last month, but that's Women's History for this month too, man. That's a heck of a story. So hats off to her. Yeah,
it caught my eye when I saw it. The last thing I want to talk about is there's so much to talk about.
I already know.
Well,
Come
you know
on,
where I'm
man.
going. I want to talk about Donald Trump, and I don't know if anybody has been keeping up with him over the past week, but he is apparently, even being a billionaire a few times over, is having a problem coming up with $464 million. And he's recently this week gone to the court and told the court that he was unable to come up with the money, and that, Carlos, you'll find this interesting. He had tried to get a loan from 30 different institutions, and no one would give him the money. And so I guess, Carlos, you relate to something like this. I guess he either has a bad credit score, or his income to debt ratio must be kind of high, because I'm thinking Mar-a-Lago and these other places have mortgages on them. And so that's why he's unable to come up with the money. But I just want to talk briefly. I know my time is running. I got 2 minutes. I wanted to do some research and just come up with some facts regarding Donald Trump. I saw a picture the other day, and I sent it to Gary. I don't know if he was able to copy it and bring it up. But it was a picture of all of the boxes, classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and they were in a public bathroom. And they are boxed up with his golf clothes and his shoes and everything else. And just to give you an example, and these were classified documents, a lot of it was stuff that he was briefed on. What happens with the president? Every morning, the president gets a security intelligence briefing. Gary probably is very, he probably knows a lot about that. But I went through and I just give you some quick facts. March of 2000, retired Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Price Bishop was arrested in Hawaii and charged with unlawfully retaining documents related to national defense. Bishop ended up in March of 2014. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. You had another national security contractor by the name of Harold Martin. He was arrested by federal prosecutors, and he was charged with having top secret government documents. He ended up in July of 2019. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison for maintaining these documents. You have a CIA guy by the name of Jared Lee, who was sentenced to 19 years in prison for having national security documents. And the last one was Elizabeth Shirley. She ended up getting 8 years in prison, and she was also given probation. But a lady that I remember, I kind of followed her story, was an FBI analyst, and her name was Kendra Kingsley. She was 50 years old, and she was sentenced to 4 years for illegally retaining classified documents. And the U.S. district judge gave her 3 years in prison and 4 years in prison and 3 years supervised probation. So I wanted to set that backdrop to these people went to jail, and they didn't have classified documents in a bathroom in banker boxes, unsupervised. There's a thing called a chain of evidence when you are handling classified material. And if you have classified material, you have to have what is called a SCIF. If it's in your house, that has to be a room with a special safe. And usually it's a room that has to have a special lock on the door. Last thing I will just talk about very briefly is Donald Trump. I wanted to title this privilege, the benefits of privilege. And I was telling my wife, and I was talking to her at dinner, and she said, well, what you should title it is the benefit of privilege. And when will the chickens come home to roost? I just wanted to say, Trump has several associates. He has 91 charges now, but here's some of his people. Peter Navarro, who just recently was sentenced and tried to get the Supreme Court to hear his case, and they refused to hear it. George Papadopoulos, Paul Manafort, Richard Gates, Michael Cohen, and Alan Weissenberg. All of those people were close associates of Donald Trump, and every one of them went to jail. And he's the only one left standing. And finally, what I'll say is, I'll let it speak for itself. Gary, you have a clip. I'd like for you to run
it. Funny. It's spelled Fanny. It's spelled Fanny like your ass, right, Fanny? But when she became DA, she decided to add a little French, a little fancy. Funny. Funny and, you know, Funny and Mr. and Mrs. Wade, which his wife did not appreciate. His wife didn't appreciate. Can you imagine these two people trying to take down I'm a very popular president. I mean, again, I got more votes than any sitting president in history. We have these two lowlifes trying to take down a president of the United States.
He was posting AI videos of Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis in bathing suits and lingerie and barely dressed, and Donald Trump would put in the video Nathan Wade and Fani Willis as though Nathan Wade was kind of thinking about Fani Willis not dressed. And this is what Donald Trump was posting. I mean, this is someone who's supposed to be the leader of the Republican Party, was spending the weekend posting AI videos of a distinguished prosecutor from Fulton County. He talks about Nathan Wade, and then he starts making like sex gestures on stage. Here, play this clip.
And her lover, Nathan Wade. And they hired him for almost $1 million because of his great experience. Of course, he didn't have any experience. He had experience in something else. You know that. A lot of experience. They waited. And I probably have another one. They say there's a young woman, a young racist in Atlanta. She's a racist. And they say, I guess, they say that she was after a certain gang, and she ended up having an affair with the head of the gang or a gang member. And this is a person that wants to indict me. She's got a lot of problems, but she wants to indict me to try and run for some other office. What's going on in this country is, and by the way, wants to indict me for a perfect phone call. This was even better than my perfect call with Ukraine.
Alina Habba would go on TV, and this was from this past week, where she goes, Fani or Fanny, whatever she calls herself, she calls herself by her name. Alina, she calls herself Fani because that's what her name is. You're the one, and Donald Trump's the one who mock her and post all of these things. Here, play this clip.
What do you think it means for whether or not he will decide to remove Fani Willis from this case? What does your gut tell you on this, Alina?
I don't think it's indicative necessarily of his actions in terms of Fanny. I think that Fani, whatever she calls herself, she's got her own issues that are outside of this case that clearly have permeated her decision-making ability. And
turned off. When here we are, we campaigned for a year, and I obliterate my competition. And they said, "Sir, please don't talk about these people that way. They're Republicans." I said, "I don't give a shit. They're terrible." I said, "I don't care." No, my highly paid advisor, "Sir, you shouldn't talk to them about that." One of the people said, "Are you going to run against the president?" He said, "I have no comment." To me, that meant he's running. So I hit him hard. I hit him low. I hit him high, just like we did to ISIS. We hit him hard. We hit him low. We hit him high. We hit him in the middle. We hit him from on top, and we even came under the ground. We hit this guy so hard, by the time he announced, nobody knew what the hell happened. They said, "What happened to him? He's a shell of the
What
man."
message are we sending to our kids and our grandkids and future generations? The damage that's being done is tremendous. And this was a few weeks ago, one of these kids at the rally who watched what Donald Trump says and watch his parents. They watch their parents who like this stuff. There's WWE cosplay fascism. And watch what this kid says about Fani Willis and Nikki Haley. Here, play this clip.
Yes, sir.
Let's put Fannie and Nikki in jail.
Okay. We can.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it.
Well.
The only thing I'll say in closing is I went on to Google and I tried to do some research. And what I asked Google was to show me some presidential quotes. And it came up with 50 presidential quotes. And I just kind of went through all of them and I saw quotes from Theodore Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, John F. Kennedy, Harry S. Truman. I even found a quote that said, "The law is the only sure protection of the weak and the only efficient restraint upon the strong." And it was a guy by the name of Miller Fillmore.
Okay.
I wasn't even familiar with him. He was the 13th president of the United States. So the only thing I'll say in closing is this guy went before the judge and for the court, and he talked about how his trial needed to be delayed because he needed to campaign. And what I will say to you is, if you go back through history, you won't find, when I was doing the quotes, I could not find one quote from Donald Trump. And if you go back through history, you've never seen a president who purported himself in the manner that you just saw. And if Joe Biden did that, they would be holding impeachment hearings. So what I'll say is, in closing, is if you want to go to sleep at night and have this person with the nuclear codes in his possession, I hope you sleep well.
You know what, Bill? Let's put it this way, and I'll let the other guys talk also, but think about it. If anyone on your job behave like that, representing your company, they would be fired.
You talking about any one of the three women that Carlos talked about earlier?
Any one of us, anybody,
Anyone.
any one of us. Go ahead,
Any-
CJ.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with everything Mr. Spivey said. Like Donald Trump is a degenerate scammer and shouldn't be allowed anywhere near any type of public office, much less anywhere else. But I will say I think there is a better and more effective way to attack him than his outrageous, stupid statements that he's gonna make a mile a minute, and you'll exhaust yourself every time you linger on one of Trump's stupid statements because it's gonna happen. You know, every rally that he has. But I think if you focus more on the things like he's going to cut Social Security again if he becomes president, and Medicaid and things like that, and the more substantive damaging policy things that are in his agenda, I think that would also be effective in attacking rather than just every outrageous thing he says, because he says a lot of stupid, outrageous stuff. And I think it's a strategy to distract the media from some of his policies, where he can lie about, oh, I did all this for the American people. And they're, instead of fact checking him on those things, they're distracted by what he tweeted about Fannie Willis, you know, things like that, you know, about little things. So I'm
He
just
said
not
he got
really.
more, what did he say? He got more votes than any president in history.
Yeah, it's
That's
like
the
they get
biggest
so
lie.
exhausted they don't even fact check him at this point. He lies so much, like it's almost exhausting to fact check him. And I think that's a strategy that he uses, especially in debates. If you can't fact check him in real time, he'll just lie and lie and lie, you know, and that's a strategy that he does to deflect from some of the horrible things he does in terms of policies, in terms of increasing drone strikes 200, 300%, in terms of all the terrible things Donald Trump did that don't ever get talked about in the media because they're talking about just every, you know, dumb tweet that he put out.
Well, he said
Carlos?
something the other day that I thought was kind of crazy. He says that if he goes back in to the presidency, there's a strong chance that he may boot Prince Harry out of the United States if he wins.
So again, just ridiculous stuff.
Hey, man, let me tell you, here's the bottom line. Trump, man, like you said, I agree. If anybody said any of these things on any job, you would no longer be working at McDonald's. I mean, it doesn't make a difference.
At McDonald's.
a corporate boardroom. Doesn't make a difference where you just can't do all these things that he's doing. He's now becoming a terrible influence on children. That little kid walked up and started bad mouthing the judge. Was it, Fonnie or whatever? That's ridiculous, man. I mean, what type of example are you setting? Like, just like the guy in the clip said. And I think that one thing I've started to notice, right? I'm starting to see this trend, right, of people who were once prominent acting this crazy when they don't get their way. And it ain't just Trump. It's happening in our own communities right now, if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just crazy. You were once prominent. Now, because you don't get your way in everyday life and don't get all the things you want, you just want to go out and trash people. That's not right. You need to take a look at yourself in the mirror. But what I'm also learning is the people who do this type of thing, they're their own worst enemy. Trump may never go to jail, but financially, he may die a broke man. I think him dying a broke man whenever that time comes is going to be worse than him going to jail, because that means everything he's built has been taken away. And right now, he has some serious cash flow problems. So I think it's not okay to trash people because you don't get your way. I think you need to have a little bit more grace and compassion for people. And if you do things the right way, champions rise to the occasion. I just don't know what to think that, this guy could still become president when he can't even represent himself, his family, the state of New York, the state of Florida, the country, wherever he's from now, because he's from all over the place. He's just really starting to become a major embarrassment. So again, I don't think he's ever going to jail, even though he has 91 charges, but I do think that there is a strong, chance that when that time comes, when he's over 100 or whatever age it is, that is his last year, that he may actually die broke based on what's happening now. And that might be the punishment he deserves to give him the legacy he probably has earned. So I wish everybody well, but I wish Donald Trump would just stick to the politics, which will probably never happen, and stop trashing people because you're not getting your way. That's not right. And it's not American, and stop being a bad example for kids out there. So that's my take.
Carlos, one of the things that's very troubling, I talked to one of my old former colleagues last week, and he brought up something that really causes you to think. Apparently that people knew ahead of time that Donald Trump was trying to get this $464 million because he has to post that in order to appeal the Eugene Carroll decision. And if he can't post it, he's got to start paying it. And he said something that I had never even thought about. He said that Donald Trump, if he needs to post this money, needs to get this money from somewhere. And there's probably only two places that he can get this money from. And that's from a Russian oligarch or from the Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And if he gets the money from either one of those sources and he goes back into the White House, they will be in control of the White House, because he who, as the old saying goes, he who pays the piper dictates the tune.
And on
Not good.
And on that note, we gave you something to think about, folks. As usual, we are the Thought Brothers, and until next week, we are out of here.
Good night, folks.